I just cannot get over the amount of worms in this. Every year we get more and more worms. Must be doing something right. G'day folks, been a while since I posted a compost video, so here we go. I've been working on the compost cage over there to the right. It's a basic slow method composting that I've been doing for a couple of years now, and I'm pretty much well sold on the method, so thought I'd bring you along and show you. Also had a couple of people interested from Facebook and Instagram, bits I've posted there, so just wanting to know how I actually made it up. Now this time around I've tried to use as much material from the patch and from the house that I could. I've been saving up garden scraps, bits and pieces like asparagus fern and banana leaves. What else have we saved up? Some Okinawan spinach that I pruned back from the aquaponics as it was taking over. Just been saving them up around in barrels around the place, just getting ready to prepare this cage. The main ingredient used in this cage is actually Chinese elm, which is a bit of a weed species here in southeast Queensland. We've got it growing all up and down our fence line, and I've been pollarding it for years now, about 2 or 3 years. Pollarding, by the way, is just when you let a tree grow and then you snip off the large sections from the tall stump. Yeah, I've been mulching that up and throwing it in the compost. Now, I've had a few concerns raised on Facebook that I'm spreading a noxious weed through my garden patch by doing this. No, I'm not. I'm not that silly. So the berries are pretty easy to see. They're a little orangey yellow berry, and they turn brown after they age a while. The rainbow lorikeets actually like them, and I've seen the cockatoos up there as well as the flying foxes. They feed on them, then go and poop the seeds out somewhere else. They're spreading the seeds, I'm not, and there's no way I'd put them in compost and spread them around my patch. So just thought I'd clear up that for anyone who thinks I'm, doing the wrong thing here. I'm basically making use of a resource that would normally be dug out of the ground, shipped off to landfill and buried. So I think I'm being pretty responsible, to tell you the truth. Now, the Chinese elms that were growing down the fence line, they actually did get rather tall. Luckily for me though, that means a lot more material that I could throw into this cage. So the process was pretty basic really. Set up my little mulcher down close to the trees, snip the branches off and just run them through the mulcher. This leaves pretty nice chunky bits of timber, and if you get enough greenery in there together, it'll cut it up pretty fine as well. Before I get to the layers and how they went into the cage, you can make out the little silver panel there in the front bottom of the IBC cage. That's actually one of the identification plate that are bent around the bars on an IBC. I ripped that off another one that was used in a build somewhere else in the yard, and I've used that to form a little hatch that I can use to access the compost once it's done, because trying to bend over the top there, not good for the back at all. So all I did was I took my saber saw, chopped out 2 of the bars that were running across that section there, and drilled a few holes in the metal panel, zip tied it onto the cage, and that gives me a little access port when the level of the compost shrinks. Just cut those zip ties, lift up the shade cloth, and yeah, I've got full access with my nice wide shovels. As for the layers themselves, I started off with roughly around about 20 to 30 centimeters, that's roughly 6 to 12 inches of mulched up Chinese elm. From there I added on some of the saved scraps that included the Okinawan spinach and other prunings from around the patch, gave it a bit of a water. Some semi-composted mango trimmings that have been sitting in a container for quite a few months was then added in. The idea behind that is adding in some beneficial bacteria. They'll help to kickstart the composting process. That was then watered down because you need to keep your compost pile while you're building it nice and moist. The microorganisms really do like a little bit of water in there. Then I added in another probably 10 to 15 centimeters, 4 to 6 inches of tree mulch. On top of that, I added in some rotten mango tree stump. It's going to add carbon, and also because of its sponge-like consistency, it will hold a fair bit of moisture in there. The stump had been living in the hoop house for the last 6 to 8 years, and I finally got it out of the ground, smashed it up with a sledgehammer and added it in. On top of the mango, I added in some biochar that we had sitting underneath the house. Biochar is basically carbon. It works really well at holding water, and it creates a lot of crevices for bacteria to inhabit. So I threw some of that in just because I had it in bags under the house and I have to use it up, and I figured a great place to use it would be the compost. Now, on top of that, I added in a whole heap of fish frames and heads and guts that we've been been saving in the freezer. Some prawns went in. I left some prawns out overnight once and they got spoiled, so I froze them again. Bianca wasn't too happy, and I've thrown them in there as well. We have had other animals go through our compost piles. This round one behind me here, I actually put a bit of roadkill possum in there. We had a little red fellow, a little red possum. Yeah, he pretty much all met his end on the road out the front, so rather than waste his nutrients, I dug a hole in the middle of the compost, popped him in there, and he's pretty much, well, I can't find him. We dug around about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, maybe a month, and I couldn't find any evidence of him in there at all. The bacteria had worked on him, broken him down. We've also thrown in things like rats that have died around the place in traps, also cane toads, which are a pest species here in Australia. We've popped them in there and composted them down as well. So as far as I'm concerned, they're all fair game to be composted. Not something I'd put in a small little compost bin, but yeah, definitely fair game for anything as big as that or the other square one we have over there. In on top of the fish and the prawns, we tossed some scraps that have been saved for us with some used coffee grounds, and I also sprinkled a little bit more biochar in there as well. On top of that, I added in another layer of mulched up tree trimmings, probably about 8 to 12 inches, so 20 to 30 centimetres. I then spread a layer of the semi-composted mango trimmings in on top of that again, and then another layer of the mulched up tree trimmings, the Chinese elm. So then I didn't really do much with the pile for about a week. Christmas got in the way. I did throw in a couple of weed amaranth that were growing around the patch and a few other bits and pieces, but we were just too busy having visitors over and going and seeing other people during the holidays, so I left it for a week. When I got back to it though, I was very impressed to see that the temperature was sitting around about 62 degrees centigrade or 144 degrees Fahrenheit, so that was pretty encouraging to see. To get the top layer moist again, I added in some water, and then straight on top of that I put in some dried asparagus trimmings and banana that had just been laying in barrels around the place. It was nice and dry, so there's a nice layer of carbon. Then on top of that I added in the last of the rotten mango stump. On top of that went some prawn shells and Moreton Bay bug shells, bits and pieces from Christmas, a couple of mango skins, some coffee grounds and whatnot from the kitchen. On top of that went about half a foot of mulched up Chinese elm. Then in went a bag of aged horse manure. Basically I'd started to run out of bits and pieces from around the patch to add. Added in some water, topped it off with some alfalfa hay, a hay bale we've had sitting around for almost 8 months now, so a bit of that went in as well. Then another layer of tree mulch, pretty much all a foot's worth, and then some more aged horse manure, some more water as it went in, and then I topped it off with some nice sandwich layers of the alfalfa hay, just to give a bit of a blanket, as you will, on top to keep the heat in. So that was pretty much well how it went together. So we'll hop up and have a look at the compost thermometer and see where it's sitting at the moment, and then we'll pop over and have a look at the what I hope the end result will turn out to be in the large round compost cage behind me. So I must say that I'm really chuffed with the way this one's gone. As you can see, it's fallen quite a bit. What I'll be doing is I'll just be adding more bits and pieces, trimmings from the garden or maybe coffee grounds and waste from the kitchen into this as well. So it'll continually be added to. I'll just lift off these wafers or sandwiches or whatever you want to call them and just pop more stuff in here. It's very, very warm to the touch on top, and if I tap my little thermometer here, we have it coming up at 70 degrees Celsius or roughly 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So it still has a lot of thermophilic bacteria in there doing their thing, generating the heat. But I'm pretty impressed with the way this is going. You won't find any worms in here, it's just too hot at the moment. So what I've found happens with other compost piles I've made, any worms that are in the ground around this compost pile would evacuate with the amount of heat that's being generated. They'd go off somewhere else, probably over to the other compost pile that I'll show you in a minute, and then they'd come back here once it cools down, and then they'll populate this compost cage and yeah, basically reproduce and finish off turning all the bits of organic matter into nice nutrient rich plant food. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it's going. I definitely think that little hatch down the bottom is going to save my back a fair bit, because leaning over to shovel out the bottom crumbs in this thing is definitely, yeah, not good for the back. Anyway, we'll wander over and we'll give you a bit of a look at the big round compost cage. Just cover this all up. So just over here we have the other compost pile that I'm actually harvesting at the moment. Bits and pieces of this have gone into a corn bed out the front. I'm not having much luck with that seed, but I've fed up a wheelbarrow load into that bed, chock full of worms, very impressed. Also too, making up a lot of potting mix to go into the root pouches we've got around the place, and we'll be using this to top dress a few other beds and barrels and whatnot. It's a very basic build. I've used concrete reinforcing mesh because it was nice and cheap. I think in other places in the world you can get a galvanized cattle panel. I'm not too worried about this not being galvanized. To hold it together, I've just used some wire that's just twisted around there. There's a little bit there, and there's a little bit just around the corner here. I've just left 2 cells overlapping. There's actually 3 sheets in there, so it's made up a pretty sturdy compost pile. All I need to do to get to the stuff down the bottom, because it doesn't have a little scrape out hatch like the other one, is just snip off these bits of wire, and this the mesh will open up and I can get in there with a shovel. Now this one here was actually set up to be a compost hot water system for the aquaponics system last season. The season just moved too fast and I couldn't get the heater set up and worked out, all the kinks worked out in time. So what we've got in here is a couple of bits of Rio rod, and inside of there I've got some 1" or 25mm irrigation pipe. The idea was to have water go through there, heat up with the thermal mass of the compost, and then in turn heat the aquaponics. Yeah, I didn't quite do a good enough job, but yeah, next winter for us down here in Australia, I'll be revisiting this. So if you're interested in that, there will be a clip at some point, hopefully. Anyway, we'll have a bit of a closer look at the compost in here. It's, you know, pretty impressive stuff, I think. All I've done is I just grabbed this straw from around different parts of the pile and just put it over any exposed areas, because I don't really want this compost to dry out after I've dug out from it. I've actually got some of the orchid flower tree seeds germinating in here. We don't want them, but this stuff is pretty fantastic. It's broken down, it's nice and friable. I don't think I mentioned before, but it's roughly around about 5 to 6 months old. So this stuff on the surface, I've disturbed it earlier today, so there's not going to be much earthworm activity in there, or sorry, compost worm. We'll just dig down the side here and see what we can find. There we go. A big worm I've squished there. There's a whole host of worms inside there. This stuff is actually crawling with worms. It's some of the best compost we've made. I keep saying that, but then again, every year this stuff just keeps getting better. You can probably make out a little cocoon there in the center of the screen. Absolutely amazing, this stuff. Chock full of worms. There's even more worms down in there. So this stuff is definitely brown gold as far as I'm concerned. So we'll just cover these worms up. But yeah, thoroughly impressed with the quality of this compost. Again, it's like the other one. It's a slow composting method. 6 months, like I said, or roughly 6 months. So the idea is to let all the woody material in that Chinese elm break down and yeah, provide us with this awesome looking stuff. So yeah, mighty chuffed. Can't really say much more on this stuff. It's just fantastic as far as I'm concerned. So there you go, folks. There's a bit of a look at the compost cage that's cooking away. We just made over the last couple of weeks, and also to the big round one we're harvesting castings from. Yeah, I must say I'm really chuffed with the way the system works for me. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. A lot of people like the fast composting methods, whether it's the soda pop or beer method that does it really fast by adding a sweet substance. There's also the 18-day Berkeley method I learned through the permaculture PDC with Jeff Lawton. There's all different types of methods. I just like this slow method. I know the wood that goes in there all gets broken down. The amount of worms in there and other life in there is just totally unbelievable, so I'm more than impressed with that. You might have also noticed there's an empty cage laying down next to the compost cage that we have on the go at the moment. That was sitting where the round one was. That compost cage will be set up right where it's standing pretty much, but I don't have a lot of biomass on hand here to basically feed it. So what I'm going to have to do is ask my cousin if she's got some horse manure ready. I might have to buy some in, also get some hay in, some browns in. Need to start harvesting things like this canna regulus that we have growing around the place. We have this little stand around the pond, and also an IBC full, and I mean full, probably 10 to 12 foot tall now, of the Queensland arrowroot or canna regulus down the back there. chop that down, throw that into the compost cage as well, add some more biomass. We've got pigeon pea over there that we can harvest and out the front, and also a pumpkin vine. We're just being smashed with Queensland fruit fly at the moment. They're striking all the pumpkins as they set, so I'm going to cut that vine back and I can throw some of that green matter in there as well. Might as well make use of the plant while we've got it, and hopefully have 3 compost piles on the go. We'll have one cooking, one being built slowly, and one we're harvesting from. So see if we can get a bit of a rotation up, because it does take so long, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to harvest some compost every couple of months to feed up the beds. So I will pretty much leave it there. I hope you have enjoyed the clip. If this is one of the first clips of ours you've seen, feel free to hit that subscribe button and you'll get an email every time we post a clip to the channel, and you can come along and suss out what's going on. It might be on the compost, the aquaponics, chickens, composting worms, you never know. Also too, feel free to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We've got accounts over there. There'll be links in the description below. I really do hope you've enjoyed the clip and you've got something out of it. And if you've got any comments, questions or suggestions, feel free to pop them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you where I can. Other than that, I hope everyone is well and happy, and I will catch you next clip. Cheers folks.